Hello, I'm Dorothea. I'm a Jungian analyst in private practice, and I thought I'd take on the rather tricky question of the self, because the Jungian concept of the self is a little different from the way other people approach the self. So, and what I thought I would do is cover some basic concepts in this talk. I'm just going to assume that some people don't know the terms at all, while some people in this audience will know everything. So the ones who know a lot, please forgive me if I'm going back through concepts that you know really, really well. And I'll just go with, I'll just assume that not everyone knows, and I'll go through the basics, and maybe it's a bit of a revision if you know it really well. Because one of the things about Jung, he developed the concept of the self over a lifetime. And he started with some very early, and it's all based on Jung's experience and his way of his way of relating to the self. And so often his writing seems contradictory, but it isn't actually. It shows that it's a development from when he was younger to just before his death. And it also he's also shared his experience in many contexts. So sometimes he talked about the same thing in different words. So sometimes it can be confusing when Jung talks about the self. It is actually, he's always shared from his own experience. And he viewed the self, that was the latest definition he had a year before his death, as the self as both the center and the totality of the psyche. And there we are, we already got terms like self, center, totality, psyche. So I will need to go through some of those terms. But because he has such a broad concept, it is actually worth exploring it. And the self is the goal towards which the process of individuation strives. And now individuation is another term. And it represents psychic wholeness and by the process by which self-division might be healed. Now, some of you probably say, great, got it, know everything. And some of you say, what? What are you talking about here? So let's explore a bit more. So Jung describes the self in the following way. The self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference, which embraces both conscious and unconscious. New terms for some people, conscious and unconscious. It is the center of the totality, just as the ego is the center of consciousness. Again, I will go through some of those terms a bit later on. And like any archetype, the essential nature of the self is unknowable. But its manifestations are seen in myths and legends. And what we mean by it is essentially unknowable, because the self is both conscious and unconscious. And by definition, the unconscious cannot ever be known. We sometimes get images, we sometimes get dreams, we sometimes have a slip of the tongues, we sometimes have experiences, we sometimes project our unconscious motives onto other people. But we actually, in essence, the unconscious cannot be known. So the self as a whole is a mystery. And that's why the self appears in dreams, myths, fairy tales, and also such people like kings, heroes, prophets, saviors, or in the form of totality symbols like the circle, the square, the quadratura circuli, the cross. And this way it represents what Jung calls a complexia oppositorum. It's the opposites, the theory that two opposites when they combine, make a whole, a union of opposites. It can also appear as a united duality. For example, you all know the symbol of the Tao, where they say the sort of yin and yang, where you get the black dot in the white and the white dot in the black. Mm-hmm. So it itself sort of appears as a play of light and shadow. And it can be conceived as a totality and unity in which the opposites are united. And the question is, how is that actually possible? It can be confusing when you read definitions like that. So how did Jung actually come to some of his conclusions that I've just read you some of his words? Well, the way Jung did it was he actually worked from his own experience. So he actually went to the depth of his own being, his own soul, and he used that knowledge that he gained to form a theory. And so with that theory and his sharing of his experience, he's hoping that this will trigger knowledge in other people's souls. And part of the reason why Jung went for that is, some of you might know that he grew up in Switzerland. He was the son of a pastor, and he had a mother that was quite depressed, but also spooky. She was very much into occult things. And so Jung struggled a lot in his younger life. He had two personalities. Personality one, which was a schoolboy, and personality two, which was a medieval, well-knowledgeable adult. And it took a while to find his calling, which he ended up finding as a psychiatrist in the Berkeley Institute, which was a big hospital. And then from there, he made a friendship with Freud, who was another giant in his time, an intellectual genius. And the two were very close until they started to fall apart over some theory issues. And then Jung became very depressed and devastated, and he had to do a huge inner journey to get himself out of that. And at the same time, that inner journey became the basis of his future work. And we have the Red Book, for example, in the library, which I've asked Jean to display, which shows you some of Jung's work and his mandalas and things he did during his inner journey. And there is a Jungian vision. And the vision is of a coherent and meaningful psychic whole existing in a world which there are processes of growth to be experienced and breakdowns that need to be handled. It is a vision of a world in which the individual psyche matters. People matter, experience matter. And the way Jung acknowledged knowledge was different to how a lot of people do nowadays. He was a scientist, and so he was very externally oriented, trying to very much prove everything and see things in the world and do experiments on it. But he was also equally valued his inner life. And he thought that was as important, what was happening inside of him, his dreams, he spent a lot of time playing with stones to make little villages and that. His drawings, they were as important to him. His inner dialogue, with the various figures within himself, were as important to him as the outward external things, which some psychologists nowadays would not value. But to Jung, they valued immensely. And he said you needed both to be whole. So Jung himself said, my life is a story of self-realization of the unconscious. everything in the unconscious seeks outward manifestations, and the personality too desires to evolve out of its unconscious conditions and to experience itself as a whole. And so he very much believed that the unconscious mattered, and we needed to be in communication between the conscious and the unconscious in order to become whole. So of course he would say, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. That's quite countercultural to some of our current values. So let's go through some of the terms that I'm using. The psyche, it was one of the terms I've used, which is the soul, but it's also a term for the whole personality. Jung writes, by psyche, I understand the totality of all psychic processes, conscious as well as unconscious. So we use the term psyche rather than mind, since mind is used in common parlance to refer to aspects of mental functioning which are conscious. And Jung maintained that the psyche is a self-regulating system, like the body. He believed that, for example, if a conscious attitude became too strong, there would be some unconscious influence that would try to right that. So the role of the psyche, the whole personality, strives to maintain a balance between opposing qualities, but it also seeks its own development. And this process of getting to know yourself better, becoming more whole, integrating all the different aspects of yourself, Jung called individuation. So for Jung, he talked about components of the psyche, like complexes with archetypal content that are personified and functioning autonomously as secondary selves, not just as drives and processes, as some of Freudian theory would have said. And you might think about it yourself. There may have been times when you thought, why did I do that? I wasn't myself at all today. I couldn't imagine that, or I can't really think of, oh, that's not like me at all. Sometimes sort of an autonomous complex takes over and you end up doing things or thinking things or experiencing things that are quite out of your normal way of functioning. And again, you have to think about these are metaphors. So they're a way of thinking about processes. So they're not set in concrete. And they can be subject to change depending on what the person does and experiences. And Jung called the process of a person becoming whole individuation. And a part of individuation is integrating the opposite and also developing a communication between the conscious and the unconscious, while both the ego and the self will maintain their own autonomy. And it's not, the self obviously is much, much bigger in concept than the ego, because it doesn't just include the conscious processes, it includes all of the unconscious processes. But if the ego sort of like becomes a slave of the self, then that doesn't work either. They need to be two cooperating entities. And here you've got a few other terms which you haven't mentioned yet, like the persona, the shadow, the anima, the self. And I'll give a brief definition of all those names so we have all a common language. So the ego is generally considered the center of consciousness, while the self is generally centered in both the conscious and the unconscious. And again, with unconscious, Jung has talked about two types of levels of unconscious. He talked about the personal unconscious, which is a person's memories, a person's experiences, things that he may not have liked and repressed, or things that he can't remember, the things that may have never come to the surface. And the collective unconscious is more the society level of consciousness that impacts all of us. So some people would also say things like there's a cultural unconscious, there's maybe a biological unconscious. So there are various different levels of that collective unconscious. So just to repeat again, the personal unconscious, it's memories that were there, but for whatever reason are not palatable to the person, so they become repressed or suppressed. Or they could be fears. There could also be things like you don't like about yourself, which often is referred to as the shadow. But also in the shadow, you can get gold, you can get good qualities you have you don't actually recognize in yourself. And your fears, desires, there's a lot in your personal unconscious that you just may not want to know about, or it's become so strong that you repressed it because it was too strong for you to deal with it. And trauma is often in that basis, because often traumatic memories do not get laid down in a form which you can verbalize. So they may often be just splinters of memories or feelings or sensations or things like that that can't even surface to the conscious. And often if the unconscious needs to communicate with the conscious, it's like the unconscious wants to communicate. It can't. Inherently, it has to find something that's nearly conscious, piggyback on it, and then ride with the emotion so it can at least come to the attention of the person. And while the collective unconscious is more like something that's in the collective, that's in the community, that's the culture, ideas that are taught. Sometimes we may even know these are the values we hold, and sometimes we don't, because the collective unconscious might sometimes be so strong and just says this is how it is, rather than this is just a value or this is the way we see things as a culture. But no, our culture is right. And there can't possibly be any other way. So often the collective unconscious can have a very big shadow as well. So you can actually work with the personal unconscious. You can actually choose if you want to, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not. You can choose to try and find out what's in your personal unconscious and make it conscious. And there's some various, often doing analysis can help you with that. Seeing a counselor, some people, often in relationships, you can find what you're projecting onto somebody else is often part of your personal unconscious, but it actually requires some effort on the part of the person. So we are talking about an interaction between the collective and the personal unconscious. In each person, we all have a part of the collective unconscious. We all have a personal unconscious. And sometimes they interact and overlap. Now, Jung's words again. Everything of which I know, but of which I am not at the moment thinking, personal unconscious. Everything of which I once was conscious, but have now forgotten. Everything perceived by my senses, but not noted by my conscious mind. Everything which involuntarily and without paying attention to it, I feel, think, remember, want, and do. All the future things which are taking shape in me will sometimes come to consciousness. All this is the content of the unconscious. Now that's a lot. And beside these, we must include all more or less intentional repressions of painful thoughts and feelings. I call the sum of these contents the personal unconscious. And the other very important player is the ego. And the ego is, Jung saw the ego as the center of the field of consciousness, which contains our conscious awareness of existing and a continuing sense of personal identity. It is the organizer of our thoughts and intuitions, feelings and sensations, and has access to memories which are not repressed. The ego is the pair of the personality and stands at the junction between the inner and the outer world. And for any work, effective work, you need an ego that is well established and strong if you're going to tackle dealing with the unconscious. Now, that is one theory of how the ego arises, but let's go with that because some post-Jungians have different views of this. But Jung's theory was that the ego arises out of the self during the course of early development. It has an executive function. It perceives meaning and assesses value so that it not only promotes survival, but makes life worth living. It is an expression of the self, though by no means identical with it. And the self is much greater than it. And the self for Jung is the whole of the psyche, including all of its potential. It is the organizing genius behind the personality and is responsible for bringing about the best adjustment in each stage of life that circumstances can allow. Crucially, it has a theological function. Theological meaning it is forward-looking, seeking fulfillment. The goal of the self is wholeness. And Jung called this search for wholeness the process of individuation, the purpose being to develop the organisms, that's us, fullest potential. So the self, and there are many theories about the self, so I'm giving you one. If at one point I can give you some post-Jungian theories too, but this is Jung's view. And Jung's view has changed over time too. The self is rooted in biology, but also has access to an infinitely wider range of experience, including the whole wealth of the cultural and religious realms, and the depths of which all human beings are capable. It is therefore capable of being projected onto figures or institutions which carry power, like God, the sun, kings, queens, movie stars, sports stars, people who are very wealthy, social influencers, and so on. And the ultimate pattern, the organizing principle, is the self. For Jung, this is the God image. And we're talking about the God image, which is quite differentiated from God. The God image is an image, and the term image doesn't necessarily just mean a picture or visual thing. It can be a sensation, it can be a feeling, it can be a sound, it can be a physical experience. The term image is much broader than just a visual thing. Human self and divine self are incapable of distinction. All is spirit. Images of spirit abound, wind and breath being two very common ones. And so in mythology, you get a lot of archetypal incarnations, like Galahad, who was a young prince who was looking after the Grail in King Arthur's time, and the Grail being the cup of the Last Supper that has been brought from Jerusalem to England. And Galahad achieving the Grail and sending with it to heaven is an archetypal drama of the self. And on the other side, in the same time, Lancelot, which was another famous knight of King Arthur's Round Table, to achieve the Grail speaks out for his failure to achieve the final discovery of the self. And you can get lots of stories and myths and legends that would follow that pattern. So for Jung, to achieve personal wholeness is following the individuation process. And the end result of the process in which wholeness is achieved is to bring an undivided self into existence. And he's talking about that at the beginning of life. We often, according to Jung's pattern, we often have to work out things in the world, like in the outer sphere, develop our persona, get a job, create a family. And then in the second half of life, we often have to develop the inner aspects of ourselves to get to that wholeness. It doesn't work that way for everybody. Some people do it the other way around. Jung attached a special meaning to self. For him, the self is both the center and the totality of the psyche. It consists of both the conscious ego and the unconscious, and is only constituted once there is awareness and acceptance of unconscious and its shadowy content by the ego. So for Jung, there's certain steps that is the most common pattern for people. So the first thing you often do in your own journey of individuation is confront your own shadow and come to terms with your shadow. And then you look at relationships and how that impact. And so you move through certain stages of getting to know yourself and healing your divided divisions within yourself. And again, the pattern is very individual. Not everybody follows the common pattern. Another term, the persona. The persona is the social face of the individual presented to the world, a kind of mask designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other to conceal the true nature of the individual. And we all need a persona. We need a persona to deal with the outside world, because you don't always want everyone to know everything about you. You want to project a certain image, a certain level of confidence and competence. And sometimes things like you make it You fake it until you make it, and things like that. They're all part of the persona, trying to make your way in the world. And it's important that we have a well-developed persona, but it also stops us from sometimes revealing what's our innermost truth. And this part of the personality we need so we can adapt to the outside world, so we can find a way that we can relate, that we can participate, that we can be part of a group, that we can take on jobs, that we can learn things, that we can achieve our goals. And the origin of the term comes from the mask worn by Greek actors in antiquity. It denotes the part of the personality which we show to the world. Some people have called the persona the packaging of the ego, or the ego's public relations person. And it's a very necessary part of our life. Another term, the collective unconscious. And this is one of the most distinctive features of Jung's psychology. Jung took the view that the whole personality is present in potentia. So even if it's not present now, there's a potential for it to be present from birth, and that the personality is not solely a function of the environment, as was thought at the time when he was developing his idea, but merely brings out what is already there. So he would say that the potential is already there, and in combination with the environment, the person develops and grows. The role of the environment is to emphasize and develop aspects already within the individual. Another quote from Jung. My thesis then is as follows. In addition to our immediate consciousness, which is of thoroughly personal nature, and which we believe to be the only empirical psyche, there exists a second psychic system of a collective, universal, and impersonal nature, which is identical in all individuals. This collective unconscious does not develop individually, but is inherited. It consists of pre-existent archetypes, which can only become conscious secondarily, and which give definite form to certain psychic content. So that's Jung's belief. Not everybody agrees with it, but that's how Jung saw it. And the other term that we probably need to talk about is complexes. It's a term you've probably heard thrown around as well. And so Jung considered that the personal unconscious is composed of functional units called complexes. And he reached the concept of the complex through some important and groundbreaking work he did as a young man on word association. And what word association is, it's a test that Jung devised, and he had a certain fairly well-selected list of words, and he got people to associate to it, and he timed it. And then he could see sometimes people were very quick, sometimes people had an average response, sometimes people took a very long time. So whenever there was something that was either very quick or took a very long time, he decided that meant that something was going on inside the person that was either delaying the response, so that took a long time, or didn't answer at all, or something that came so quick because they hadn't thought about it at all, and that just was an automatic response. So he found that there were internal distractions which interfered with the association of the subjects to the test words, so that their reaction time was longer for some words than others. These responses tended to form a group of ideas which were effectively feeling tone and which he named complexes or feeling tone complexes. And it might be words like death, sex, power, money. So it's father, parents, mother, nature. So the words that people have strong associations with, which when they are slow, it shows that there is more to it, to this word, than normal. Or when they're too quick. And Jung also thought that the ego was prone to making inappropriate choices or to one-sidedness, and that material arising from the unconscious could help to bring a better balance to the individual and enable further development to take place. And the complexes have their root in the collective unconscious. So they're not just in the personal unconscious, they also have the collective unconscious. And they are tinged with archetypal content, which makes them complex at times to work out. The problem, and you've probably heard of things like the father complex, the mother complex. You might be someone who's a workaholic or someone who is addicted to watching television or doing sports too much or is avoiding certain things in relationships. It's those sort of things we're talking about. The problem for the individual is not the existence of the complexes per se, but the breakdown of the psyche's capacity to regulate itself. So if you're caught in a complex, for example, people, an authority complex, give that as an example. So when you had some bad experiences with authority, so whenever somebody is in authority over you, you're likely to react either by being too submissive and saying nothing or not bringing yourself to the equation, or you might react very negatively, very quickly and go into rebellion because of past experiences, rather than being a mutual adult-to-adult interaction that people can cooperate with. Jung held that the psyche has the ability to bring into awareness dissociated complexes in archetypal material in order to provide a balance or compensation to conscious life. So if you recognize, for example, that there is a complex operating, and I'll give you an example that happened to me last week. I was working with somebody and she was very, very experienced in her job and most senior and really knew what she was doing. And this younger person arrived and basically took over. And she was just about ready to walk away from her job. And I couldn't understand it. It didn't make any sense to me because she was had so much more going for her. And then I actually just asked her who that person reminded her of. And she became aware of the fact that that woman was like the woman who destroyed her marriage. And so as soon as she had the insight, she could actually work with it. When before, she just reacted to it. So that was a dissociated complex, which by my question was able to come into a consciousness. So everyone knows that people have complexes. But what we often don't know or not aware of is the complex can have us. And the existence of complexes throws serious doubt on the naive assumption of the unity of consciousness, which is equated with psyche, and on the supremacy of the will. So this idea that you can choose to do something, and as long as you choose, you'll be able to do it, and you can have whatever you want. and you can just go for it, and not taking into account that there may be a complex, in particular a complex that may have overtaken you, so that you're actually not even aware of what you're operating under. And so that is quite difficult, because sometimes people might blame you, or you might blame yourself. Why am I not doing this? How come I can't? When there's an unconscious complex had taken you over. So every constellation of a complex postulates a disturbed state of consciousness. So when a complex has you, you're actually no longer in control. The complex is in control. And you're acting on basis of things you don't actually know about. So the complex must therefore be a psychic factor which, in terms of energy, possesses a value that sometimes exceeds that of our conscious intentions. And in fact, an active complex puts us momentarily under a state of duress, of compulsive thinking and acting, of which under certain conditions, the only appropriate term would be the judicial concept of diminished responsibility. So Jung thought at times people can get under the complex so strongly that they actually are no longer able to choose from freely. This complex has taken them over. And sometimes you see it is, for example, when people are particularly good and suddenly they do something that's so out of character, and they've, like a minister, for example, having an affair with a parishioner or something like that, which seems quite out of character. And it happens. And sometimes the person doesn't even know why they've gone that way, because they haven't explored their shadow side sufficiently. And so exploring your ego and unconscious relationship is important, because you could actually find the complex got you, or you could find some balancing information in dreams or various other experiences that could help you bring yourself back into balance and to develop further. So the problem of complexes is not that they're there, but that when we don't know about them, you're unaware of them, then they may break down the psyche's capacity to regulate itself. But also, Jung very much believed that the psyche has the ability to bring into awareness dissociated complexes and archetypal material, so there can be balance and compensation to conscious life. I think that may be one we've already done. And I'll probably talked to you enough of complexes. So we'll just another definition before we go on. And this is just about archetypes. It's another word which we throw around a lot. And one definition is that they're innate universal psychic dispositions that form the foundation from the basic symbols or representations of unconscious experiences that are emerging. And so they're often behind common motifs in mythology or in individuals' lives. They're often discussed in terms of personification, which appear in dreams, but they can also be seen in stories mythological or lived. And they're very important patterns that act on people. And then on the slide, there's a few of the more common archetypes, like the sage, the magician, the hero, the creator, the explorer, the outlaw, the jester, the lover, caregiver, everyman, innocent, ruler. Then you get the mother archetype, you get the father archetype, you get the wise man, you get the wise woman, you get the shadow, you get the evil, you get a lot of different common mythological themes. So the sort of main archetype that we probably need to be concerned about in this discussion with the self is the self itself, which is the regulating center of the psyche, and is also the facilitator of the individuation process. The shadow, which is the opposite of the ego image, and it contains qualities which ego does not identify, but which can possess it nonetheless. And they're not necessarily always dark qualities. They can be good ones. Some people just cannot recognize some of their own best qualities. And there's some discussion nowadays about the anima and the animus as the feminine image in a man's psyche and the masculine image in a woman's psyche. Because I think male-female relationships have changed somewhat since Jung came up with these terms. And I've also talked about the persona, which is there to help us act in the world and protect us. So to give you another definition, archetypes are recurring images. And images isn't necessarily just a visual image. Descriptive detail patterns, landscapes, and plot or character patterns that appear frequently in literature, folklore, religion, and myth. They're universal patterns and shapes that ignore cultural, geographical, and temporal boundaries. For example, you will have a mother archetype, and there are mothers in every society, but how the mother expresses itself in the individual situation and individuals in a certain society will be quite different. There still will be mothers, and there'll be some commonality between all the mothers. And unlike a symbol that represents something other than itself within a particular text or situation, an archetype is not context dependent. An archetype will always encapsulate the same core meaning each time it appears. So a mother will still have a mothering function, even if it's done very different in different societies. And this is a more modern version of how an archetype might have been formed, with Jean Knox, talking about the self-organization of the human brain. So Jean Knox writes, genes do not encode complex mental imagery and processes, but instead act as initial catalysts for developmental processes out of which early psychic structures reliably emerge. Archetypes play a key role in psychic functioning and are a crucial source of symbolic imagery, but at the same time are emergent structures resulting from a developmental interaction between genes and the environment is unique for each person. So this is giving a different view. It's not saying an archetype is a priori, it's there already, but it actually is something that emerges as the genes and the environment interact. Jean Knox describes archetypes as such or image schemas, which provide an initial scaffolding for archetypal imagery, and the implicit and explicit mental models which organize and give a pattern to our experience. So again, it's a little bit different to how Jung saw it, but then she lives in a more modern era and knows more about biological systems. Biological entities in the form of information, which is hardwired in the genes, providing a set of instructions to the mind as well as to the body, organizing mental frameworks of an abstract nature, a set of rules or instructions, but with no symbolic or representational content, so that they never directly experience core meanings, which do not contain representational content, which therefore provide a central symbolic significance to our experience. Metaphysical entities which are eternal and are therefore independent of the body. So different ways of envisaging what an archetype is. Also, the racial memories of the collective unconscious are expressed in literary, historical, political, mythological, and religious decisions and events throughout our time. And it can be even so, they can be subtly altered through culture and time. The major meaning of the archetype will always come to the fore. So one of the things that Jung said, and he's lived through some very terrible times, it is quite within the bounds of possibility for a man to recognize the relative evil of his nature. But it's a rare and shattering experience for him to gaze in the face of absolute evil. It's not an experience which we often have, luckily enough. Some of us do, and most of us do not have the experience of having to confront absolute evil. And also, it is true that none of us stand outside humanity's black collective shadow. And I mean, I think personally, one of the ways it has played out in Australia very sadly is the way we treat refugees, locking people up for years and years and years, and treating them very badly. So back to the self in Jungian psychology. Establishing the existence of a central point located somewhere within our being that also embraces the unending totality is bound to create great confusion as to what it is and what it means. We're talking about a central point in our existence and also embraces the totality. It seems like a paradox because you can't quite imagine how that could be possible. As this is what Jung proposes as the self, a pre-existing center of psyche containing the entirety of all that is known and unknown, and furthermore, that experiencing this self is the ultimate goal of life. Other psychologists do not tend to think of self that way. They generally tend to think of the self as a cohesive self-representation formed by experience of memory. And we, as Jungians, tend to be a bit different. The self is a personality within our being, perhaps with its own energy and agency, that is the true guiding spirit of every life. And the purpose of psychoanalysis is to reveal that truth. So really, the self is also a complete mystery that can never be fully understood. Yet we can accept that we all cleave to a central point, a place of balance, a location where there's a possible reconciliation of conflicting desires, where we can find and derive meaning from order its realization provide. So one of the things that Jung was very clear about is this experience of the self is very individual. Each person experiences it differently, and each person can only experience as much as they have felt it in their life, seen it in their life, had numerous dreams, had wonderful experiences in nature, read this wonderful book, found a movie that inspired them. And it's those sort of things that need to be there for each individual, and they're very different. So Jung actually says the self at its essence, individuality, is unitemporal and unique. So it's for one person and unique. As an archetypal symbol, it is a God image, and that's God image, not God, and therefore universal and eternal. So I'd like to take you through one of Jung's dreams, which is the definitive dream where he discovered the first idea of the self. I mean, he's been coming up to that for a while, but this is the definitive dream that Jung had. So Jung actually says that this dream depicted the climax of the whole process of development of consciousness. And without such a vision, I might perhaps have lost my orientation, being compelled to abandon my undertaking. Now, I'll have to reshare the screen so I can get you a copy of the page of Memories, Dreams of Reflection. Just give me a moment. I think. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Share. Okay. I'll read the dream and hopefully you can follow it on the screen. I was in Liverpool. We had a number of Swiss, so half a dozen walked through the dark streets. I had the feeling that they were coming from the harbour and that the real city was actually up above, out on a cliff. We climbed up there. It reminded me of Basel, where the market is down below, and then you go up through the Totengassen. The Alley of the Dead, which leads to a plateau above and to the Petersplatz and the Peterskirche. When we reached the plateau, we found a broad square, dimly illuminated by streetlights, into which many streets converged. The various quarters of the city were arranged radially around the square. In the center was a round pool, and in the middle of the pool a small island. While everything around about was obscured by rain, fog, smoke, and dimly lit by darkness, the little island blazed with sunlight. On it stood a single tree, a magnolia, in a shower of reddish blossoms. It was as though the tree stood in the sunlight and were at the same time the source of the light. My companion commented on the abominable weather of light, but they did not see the tree. They spoke of another Swiss who was living in Liverpool and expressed surprise that he should have settled here. I was carried away by the beauty of this flowering tree and the sunlit island and thought, I know very well why he has settled here. Then I awoke. And so this was, Jung added his supplementary comments to tell you why he experienced that as a dream of the self. So he said the individual quarters of the city were themselves arranged radially around a central point. This point formed a small open square illuminated by a larger street lamp and constituted a small replica of the island. I knew that the other Swiss lived in the vicinity of one of those secondary centres. Now I'll go and stop sharing and share something else again, because share screen, back to my PowerPoint. Where is it? From current slide. This is the mandala that Jung drew in as an association to the stream. As you probably gathered, the dream itself was extremely unpleasant, and Jung had very dark thoughts at the time, and it was in a bad place. But somehow that dream lifted him from that. And to him, that dream had a sense of finality. It meant that it spoke to him, and he was drawing mandalas every day for quite some time prior to that. And once he had that dream, he stopped drawing mandalas. And here in this particular image that he drew, he has replicated some of things in the dream. Like there's the center, which now the magnolia dream is more like crystal or roses in a sort of pink and different colors. There's still the 8 streets. Oops, go backwards. Nope, it won't let me go back. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'll start again. Share screen. Go backwards. To my image from current slide. Oh, is it screen sharing? No, I can't see it. Try again. Share screen. Oh, I don't seem to be able to share it again, so just talk to you about it. That mandala basically gave a description, was a representation of what the dream was about. And the city to him was a strong concept of the self. It had a center, it had coming from all directions of the city, people coming into it. It had a very light. It had the island. He could see it, and the other people couldn't see it. So there was a vision that was available to Jung and to everyone, but not everyone could get it. And it was very meaningful to him. It created, the city was like a temenos, a sacred space for him, where he could experience it, and it was very new. It was a very numerous experience for him. And so he used that for many years. He drew upon experiences like this dream and tried to share it with different people. And I wanted to show you, and I don't know why it's not sharing, show you another one of Jung's mandalas.
Dorothea, I think if you just press the back arrow there, it will go backwards, okay, without trying to start again at that point.
This is my last slide. I just wanted to show you my very last slide. I'll do a stop share and start share screen. Just want the one slide. Start from this slide. I can't show you my last slide, sorry, which is one of Jung's, it's the first mandala that Jung ever drew. And what I'm asking people now is to think about your own experiences. It might be a dream, it might be something in nature that really touched you. It might be a spiritual experience that you had. It might be conversation you had with a friend. It might be something from a book, might be something from a movie. And I'm just thinking of how does it relate to your sense of self? And after the break, if you go to the tables, form some little table groups and draw a representation of yourself, whatever that may be. And then when you're finished with that, share with other people. And I'll be here. If you want to ask some questions, I can answer. And it's time for supper, I think.
Thank you very much, Dorothea. You've done a fantastic job, and we're all much wiser now, and we can get more involved with the self. So we'll be able to have supper now and enjoy the supper, and then we'll come to the tables. We'll look at drawing myself or something to do with self, or if you want to do mandala. And Dorothy will see you shortly.
I would say that during the break, I'll be going around and newsletters, those people who have got an annual membership or a half-yearly membership. If you don't want to take your newsletter away in the rain for whatever reason tonight, I'll mail it to you later on. And I'll
Well done, Jeff. We're getting the newsletter together. They're very welcome to come and have something to eat and to drink, and we'll organise tables for you to sit around in a few more. Come back together in about past. About then. 15 minutes. Yeah. I'll see you soon.
Don't I also?
Yes.
Hi, Dorothea, can you hear me here? I'm speaking.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I just put that down a bit. Yeah. So, yeah, well, thank you for that. Oh. Oh, now we can see who we have. Yeah, can you hear us? Yeah, where are you? I wanted to know.
You could have some dire consequences. Well, it could have some serious consequences. Yeah. Yeah. Have serious consequences. Really? Serious consequences. Very serious consequences. Sorry. Motionless. Not listening. Your inner self. Not paying attention. Paying it. Attention to your inner world. Leave you one-sided. Leave you one-sided. 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 Leave you one-sided. Leave. Can leave you one-sided. Can leave you one-sided. Okay. Put in there. Unconscious. The girl has to find find a host. Find someone to latch on. So you can something. And rise to the surface. Rise into consciousness. taste. Some strong feeling. Strong feeling. Feeling. That's why we do work. We work. Work with. Oh. Just become more conscious. This is more conscious. Become more conscious. Idea. Okay, copy. Didn't finish my presentation. Did about half of what I wanted to do. Nice. Good. Chair. Okay. Okay. Right. 22. My documents. I've done it otherwise. Save. I can type that in. Paste. Paste. Trish, yeah, you can do that. Do a bit of work on the practical stuff.
Okay, everybody. So we need to find a piece of paper.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to do it indirectly. That's why you do.
Dorothea, we're sort of regathering here. Would you like to sort of invite anyone to ask questions or have some?
I'm happy to answer questions. I've already replied to some on the chat.
Oh, yes.
I've given about 3 answers on the chat so far.
Oh, yes. We'll keep a record of that chat and make it available on the website.
Yeah. Okay.
But we can...
But I'm happy to talk to people personally, yes.
Yeah. So we'll sort of regather. Here we go. We'll sort of regather, guys. Would anyone like to just talk with Dorothea or ask a question of her? Here's Andrew. You're talking to Dorothea.
Yeah. Hi, Dorothea.
Hi, Andrew.
I just wanted to know what the relationship between the unconscious and complexes is.
Okay, that's a complex tends to have its roots in both the unconscious and the conscious. So part of the complex is unconscious and part of it is conscious. So it's like, because it's an archetype, it's in both.
Okay, but does the unconscious bring up material to help the ego see what the complexes are?
Well, what the way the unconscious often communicates is can't do it straight. It's like the unconscious can't just speak because it doesn't use the same language as we do. So often it uses language, uses things like dreams, like slips of the tongue, like images, like experiences, aha moments, those sort of things, and the person has to interpret what that might mean.
Yes, but does that like help us see what the complexes are, or is that one of the functions?
That's one of the functions of doing analysis, is that you actually investigate that. Yes.
Thanks.
But it's not a straightforward process.
Hello, Dorothea. John here.
Hi, John.
Good evening.
Good evening.
With the complexes, that interested me too, and sorry, and in particular for the fact that the unconscious has this enormous impact on conscious actions. Conscious actions like giving love to somebody.
Yeah.
To what extent can that be purely conscious, or do complexes from the past enter into that, the conscious action that you want to give?
Well, it's generally a mixture. It's never straightforward. And particularly when we're talking about relationships between people, that makes it even more complex. And often you have to actually work at it to try and work out which parts of it you're aware of and which parts of it you're not aware of.
Yes, and
especially look for subtle signs.
Yeah, especially if I can diagnose why a particular person, in this particular case my mother, wasn't influenced very much by her ancestors, in particular her mother and the mother before that. And whether that can override all good intentions in the so-called conscious field, in the conscious action.
It can actually, and sometimes totally unconsciously. Sometimes people think that's exactly what's the right thing, and they don't actually realize they're doing damage.
Yeah, and therefore to say that a person giving love acted is either conscious action or an unconscious action, I can't split the difference there. And I can't say that was purely conscious because of all the other influences, the complexes behind that.
And I'd imagine there would have been a cultural complex operating as well, particularly in family history and family stories would have been there as well.
Yes, indeed.
So it's a difficult situation to unravel. But
Yes.
from the person who's receiving it, it feels just as bad, regardless of where it comes from.
Yes. And especially in relation to mothers giving away their sons to the competitor, which is the younger woman.
Mm.
A lot of things come into that.
That is an incredibly painful process for the son.
Yes. Yeah. I'll give over without holding the fort solely for myself. I'll give it back to Robert here.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I've got another one I thought of before, Dorothea.
Okay.
So as a therapist, like the unconscious can override the conscious, so you're acting in a way you wouldn't want to act. But as a therapist, how do you make sure that the client then doesn't see themselves as some sort of victim, like they can't control themselves and they have no control, therefore, oh, woe is me, I can't help it? How do you, as a therapist, make sure they don't fall into that thinking?
Well, that's one of the difficulties when you're talking between the ego and the self, or the ego and the unconscious. If the ego is not strong, so if the person says, I'm a victim, I can't do anything, then the ego is not strong, then they're already fallen completely victim to the unconscious processes. Because they haven't in any way accepted that they even can do something.
Mhm.
So that's what you'd have to work with, is the fact that they are already given up and decided they can't do anything.
Yeah. So how do you as a therapist counter that sort of thinking?
Work with the person. If I as a therapist know it, doesn't always help if I say that's what I see. But what I can do is try and work with the person to get them to realize what's going on. You try and see it for themselves in a more subtle way. Because when the person can get to their own conclusion, when they realize, oh, I actually have a choice here. I don't have to go that way. That makes a much bigger difference than if they feel like they haven't got any choice at all.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Dorothea. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
My name's Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, thanks for today. I suppose sometimes I feel like I'm one of those people that doesn't know what they're thinking till they've said it. So this could come out a bit messy.
Oh, that's good. I like messy.
I'm sort of thinking about some of the new theories around that talk about how power is constructed and maintained often through social norms and discourses. And I'm just, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking that seems to sit with Jungian's idea of the collective unconscious. Have you thought about the parallels between those different theories? And
well, they're very much taking similar factors into account. They're not saying that it's not like if between a man and a woman, let's say. There are very different cultural expectations, and often if you come from one of the more disadvantaged groups, you're already having to exert a lot more energy to be powerful, because you've got so many more negative messages than you, because the cultural concept, the culture around you says you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can do this, you can do that, and all of that is part of also the collective processes. And that in the cultural roles often are very, very powerful and not often very acknowledged, because the people who are in the center of power say, that's it. Of course, that's how reality is. You over there, you don't exist. Your view doesn't exist because we are powerful and we are the ones that have the power. And they don't even realize they have it. They just assume they have it. It's a given.
yeah, okay, yeah, because I suppose, often when I look across all the theories, there seems often to be more, I think, similarities than differences, but perhaps The language we use all the way in just seems to vary a bit. And so I suppose I'm new to Jungian theory. I'm very interested in pursuing it. But I loved that I felt like I could see some similarities there with that collective unconscious and that the power of culture and social normings and discourses.
And they're very, very powerful, as you probably experienced yourself.
Pardon?
They're very powerful, as you experienced yourself, I imagine.
They're very powerful.
Powerful, very powerful influences.
Oh, yes. Well, yes. And I think they sit in our unconscious, don't they? They're those hot spots and blind spots that we don't know that are informing our behaviours and beliefs until we get down under them. And that's lovely. Thank you. I won't. Oh, I don't think there's anyone else waiting.
No,
hang on, here we go.
can keep talking.
Thanks,
You've
Dorothea.
obviously experienced that yourself in your life. You've been thinking about it.
Yeah, I suppose so. I did come to study late. And then part of my study, I did cover that, what they called critical theory. That's how it was introduced to me. And certainly as a woman studying in her 40s, critical theory in that sense of how power is created and maintained definitely resonated. And then once I come to get a sense of that, then you can certainly see, how that's... Well, I think it is a collective unconscious, isn't it? That then, for example, continues to oppress Aboriginal people as that sort of white colonist mind is privileged. So it's often not until we get under that that we open up.
Exactly, because often the white colonist mind, like I'm one of them, I don't even know that I'm being oppressive.
That is really interesting, isn't it? That's the, that Stockholm syndrome, isn't it? Where we don't even know that we're experiencing. But so I just really loved it. And I love the idea of maybe getting to some of that stuff through arts and mandalas. At the moment, I'm working in the alcohol and drug sector with, and then quite often with people that have spent a lot of their life incarcerated. And I'm thinking, if I think that drawing might be a great way for them to get maybe to a new space. I'm not sure.
Well, it certainly facilitates another communication. It enables people, particularly people that are often not so good in writing, or sometimes even not so good verbally, they can express themselves in other ways.
Yeah, and because I'm just moving into the running group space too, so I'm quite interested in and how the Jungian theory might play out there. And whether I suppose in a group, if you're running a group, can the group kind of unwittingly fall into an old archetypal?
And that can happen in a group, yes.
Interesting. There's lots to learn here for me, Dorothea. I don't think there's anyone else waiting to speak, so I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Yeah. No, I never met Dorothea before. That was my first time. I loved it.
Can we?
Woohoo! I look forward to due course then.
Yes.
We've got Willie. We've got Willie there, and me, Trish.
Here's Richard coming up. Richard,
Hi, Willie.
did you put up your hand there?
I'm just answering questions at the moment.
So look, thanks, Dorothy. I have a question.
Okay. Yeah.
I've got a question too.
Something I'd like to pursue one day is I'll make myself visible, is the nature of evil. So something we don't talk much about. Certainly not much from uniting church pulpits these days. And you're talking about relative evil of the little things we do wrong, the peccadillos, as opposed to sort of absolute evil that more like coming from the collective unconscious. Did Do you know if Jung had much more to say about that, as to where this notion of evil comes from?
He's actually done quite a bit of writing on it. I mean, if you wanted to, I could investigate a talk on evil and Jung's concept, because he very much believes that that
Yes,
is something that's not. But in his particular time, and he went through World War One and
Yes.
World War Two, and so he has had some really serious.
Robert, I've just noted that. Yep. That Dorothea will talk about that.
Oh, is that Trish talking? Good day, Trish.
Yeah. Hi. I've got a question too. Yeah. And I think Willie's got a question as well. Yep. No. Ask your question.
Sure.
So. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to stop Robert asking.
Well, Robert probably would have asked more, but you're on now.
Oh,
no, yeah. You ask your question, I'll ask mine. Yep.
Right. Yeah. I think maybe we could do that. We ran a seminar recently with the General Semantics Seminar Association on pacifism, and I had David Arnold from the Quakers came into that, and others from America and so forth. So that was rather interesting, particularly in the light of what's happening in Europe these days. And I think that the nature of evil is something we try to sort of avoid these days. We think that maybe we're past all that, the fire and brimstone notion and all that. But I think we could explore it quite a lot more. And it would warrant maybe a Friday evening focus sometime.
Well, Jung definitely has written a lot about that. Yeah, I could do a talk on drawing out the stuff with Jung written on evil.
Yes.
Great.
What we think of as the Roman Catholic notion of original sin, would come into that, whereby sin and evil is part of our underlying nature, and we have to sort of be purged of that, or work into a better state of more civilized condition by a lot of conscious effort.
Well, Jung would say that you need to integrate it.
Yes.
So he would say they're opposite. Good and evil is opposite, and there is a need to integrate rather than to deny it.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So anyway, that's something that I think we could have some fun with sometime.
Yeah.
And there's Willie. Good day, Willie. Yeah.
So I think Willie's got a question. Yeah.
No, I haven't. I'm just interested.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, Dorothea, I don't want to take up too much time.
Yeah.
And what I need to say is
Can you put your picture on, Trish?
It's not very pretty at the moment. Yeah.
Good. I can see you now. Good. Hi, Trish.
Hi, Dorothea. Yeah. Thank you so much for your talk. It was brilliant. Oh, absolutely. But I just wanted, I just want to talk about the self and the ego.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Reduce it to that self and ego. I had an experience where I was I felt that there was, it's a me thing, sorry, but I won't take it too much. There was a self, and the self was inside, and the ego was stopping it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, I had another.
Trish, very well, but when she's finished, we might do that. Yeah.
Where I had the same experience, but
Don't make it too loud or
somehow or other,
because you've got a better microphone.
Through
Trish very well. Maybe she's not speaking, or perhaps the microphone's not so good.
And out of
stand very garbled.
Just,
And I
you
thought
know,
that's hearing
the
aids
whole
are
self
loud. That's very garbled.
Yes.
away from the ear.
Trap.
And I've always wondered what that's all about.
Mm.
I missed a lot of that, Trish. So I'm sorry. I didn't. You kept cutting in and out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's nearly.
So you cut out completely now.
Yeah, she's cut out. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. Yeah. I just love to know where that was coming from. Yeah.
No.
Yep.
Didn't look all that.
So we're just
You're cutting in and out, Trish. Can you put it in writing?
yeah, sure.
You put it
sure,
in
I will.
writing, then I can get the question because I haven't
Yeah,
got the
yeah.
question.
Sure. Okay.
And I'll answer in verbally, but I just need to get the question.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Dorothea. Sorry, Trish's sound wasn't so good, so I
Yeah,
think we'll have to.
I couldn't hear her. She kept coming in and out. Yeah.
Have to, and I didn't want to make it too much louder here, or you become too loud.
Yeah.
Because your
sorry
sound is
about that.
very
Sorry
good.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dorothea, as we're sort of finishing here, some people might like to show you their
I would
artworks
love to see
on
them.
a voluntary
Yes.
basis. Come over
Love
the
to see
camera.
them.
Yeah. So no, this is a camera. Yeah. So not to. Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, that's wonderful. Can you tell me a bit about it?
Sorry. Okay, I started off with a little flower in the middle. Then I wrote it on here, you hold it. And then I put, wait a minute. I had 11, and around it, I've got 11 crosses somewhere. These are the blue ones in there. And then I just didn't know what to do. And then I did more petals around it. Then I've got an 8-sided star. And then I wanted to make hearts. Well, once I'd done the 8 hearts, I made them into faces for no reason. And then I did a circle and then a square around the circle. And I thought, well, that's enough. I'm no good. So I did all these faces. Well, they're all 8-sided, but I've got 11 little crosses, blue crosses in the middle.
Yeah.
Around the flower.
Yeah.
So I have no idea. And I decided to put one droopy sad face in there with the mouth curved down. Yeah, I thought I can't have them all looking happy.
Yeah.
Part of yourself.
I don't know. I have no idea what that's about. 8.
Yeah. But you might think about what 11 and 8 might mean.
11 little crosses in a circle. I have
Yeah,
no
in a
idea.
circle.
And then
And
8 faces.
8 faces, yeah.
8 hearts that became 8 faces.
Faces, yeah.
And an 8-sided star.
So
No
it's-
idea.
I don't know what it is either, but it might have something to do when you were 8 or 11 or something, a multiple of 8 and 11 or.
Anyway, that's my effort for tonight.
Yeah, but it's beautiful. It's an absolutely gorgeous mandala.
Would anyone else like to come and show Dorothea your mandala? Yeah. You can talk about it, Frank. Yeah, but to show it to her, you'll have to come up to the camera,
Okay.
which is not roving. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, no, there's someone else up there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. All of them, yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's Andrew and I.
Mm. And can you tell me a bit about it?
That's a new concept.
It's a joint self.
A joint self, yeah.
If we come this way, it's a bit easier to see what you're doing.
You can describe what it's.
No, I can't describe
Representing.
it. No, I can't do that. That's my bit there.
Yeah, hold it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've
well,
obviously have a good relationship because you can do a joint picture.
Well, we do now.
Yeah,
We're merged.
yeah.
So, Yeah, we have.
It's amazing.
I can't say any more. No, I'm not saying.
That's okay. You don't need to know anymore. It's looking great.
Anyway, Shauna will talk. She'll tell you the philosophy of it.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, we started off talking about dried apricots. So I started with that on my mind, and then I just moved the crayons.
Yeah.
So not just a mandala, not a mandala, yeah.
No, it's it's a representation of what your response is. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, yeah. So we started talking about that, and I just went from there. So yeah, with the colours that I was drawn to.
Yeah. They're beautiful colours.
Indeedy do. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know what, but she has stimulated something. Yeah.
Yeah. Clearly
Maybe it was the
something
recent
there.
election that stimulated all that green. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe he's gone in there.
Let me see.
Yes. Dorothea, wait a minute. There we are. There's a somewhat messy self. I decided I'd done a mandala earlier in the year. So this is my messy self. And the seeing eye is the eye of Shiva.
Oh, wow. Oh,
On the
Shiva.
top.
Yeah.
Any interpretations?
Well, I don't have any. I'd need to hear more about from you. But it sounds
Sorry?
like a messy self is you're
A messy
comfortable with
self,
putting it out.
But
Yeah.
Shiva is looking over me anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shiva is looking
Anyway.
over you.
Yeah.
It
was fun. It was fun to do and very interesting. I appreciated clarification of a lot of things tonight. Thanks.
You're very welcome.
Okay. More.
Yeah. This is my one here. Thank you.
Oh, wow. This is great.
She likes it.
I love it. What is that? Can you let me know a bit more about it?
Sorry.
If you want to talk about it, yeah.
There's not much to say really, but I think there's sort of, this is like the body here. So the body on, and then this is sort of something else. Some of the structure around it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't. Hello, Sarah Bevan.
Hi, Sarah.
How you going?
I'm well, thank you. This is a magnificent. Wow. That's a really interesting pattern.
So I can't hear what she said.
It's a really interesting pattern.
It is. I don't know what it is. I just draw subconsciously.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one is this one. Oh, she can't see it because there's something in the way.
Did you go off that please? Because we're watching this. We need that screen, yeah. We'll capture it.
That's also an interesting pattern. Yeah.
I think that's inside the body somehow.
That's inside. So the other one is on the outside and that's inside. Yeah.
I think they're cells or something.
Cells, yeah.
I think. And also that one.
Oh, wow.
That one, that wasn't supposed to be there.
But it manifested, even though it wasn't supposed to be there.
No.
Yeah.
That one.
Wow. They're really interesting. They're very different each. Yeah.
And what else do I have? I've got that one as well.
Wow. Well, you've drawn a lot. And again, very different. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one more I've got. One more.
Okay. Wow. That's really lovely as well.
I can't explain. I can't explain much of them.
That's okay. The words, the images are the words. There's no words needed beyond that. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Here's Daisy.
Wow. Wow. Oh, what a lovely image. That's great. Oh, Daisy, you're a good drawer.
Yeah. Oh, lots of different aspects of me, I think.
Yeah. I love that. I love that picture. You do really well.
You shouldn't really comment, but I can't help saying that it reminds me of the dream you told once.
Ah, yes. The repeated dream.
About going into a room of your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a beautiful image. Yeah.
Actually, I'd like to publish a picture book of voluntary inclusions of all these mandalas and artworks. You know, just for the art, but that's another project. I think John's trying to leave me. Just a second. Any more offerings for Dorothea that you'd like to share? Oh yeah, here we go. Yep.
Hello, Dorothea. It's Coralie.
Hi, Coralie.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I can see you now. Yeah. Oh wow, that is amazing.
This is my inner hag. And she's wounded. She's an old woman who's wounded and very pissed off about it. And she's got that broken arm. She's carrying a broken arm in a sling. But inside the sling, we see a baby. And it's also like a wounded child. So I realized as I had a bit of an aha moment through your session this evening that I carry a complex of being wounded, you know, and it's not all of me. Like I have this sense of being capable and the joy of life and all that other stuff. But there's this sort of this other side of the self, the sort of woundedness. And so this is my inner hag and my wounded child. So, yeah. So there we go. Who's next?
Yeah.
I just wanted to show you that. I've just been working.
Oh, they're amazing images, and it's so great. They're so clear.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll just give you back to Rob.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. I think, Dorothea. Look,
oh, great. Okay.
We despite various unpredictables and things happening, we managed okay tonight. Here's Madam President to finish up with.
Hi, Dorothy. Thanks very much for the night. It's absolutely fantastic. Did a fantastic job.
And thank you for organising all the drawings.
I know everyone enjoyed doing the drawings. It was just fabulous. Everyone really went to it and did a great job. Okay, all the best. People are leaving now. If everyone's had a really good evening, I think. So you've done us all proud. Thank you very much, Dorothea.
It did look like everybody. All the images I saw were so great.
Yeah, no, really good, excellent. And we'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And you have a nice holiday.
Yeah, thank you. You're off next week. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you for rising to the occasion. I know it was a horrible night, but we've all did. Everyone coming. And had a really great night tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.